Tom Miller wasn't looking for trouble when he took his small cargo ship through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. As a freelance space hauler, he just wanted to deliver his shipment of medical supplies to the outer colonies and get paid. But fate had other plans that day. The first warning came as a faint distress signal, barely detectable among the cosmic background radiation. Tom's ship computer, which he called Lucy, highlighted it with a soft beep. Most experienced pilots would have ignored it. Distress signals in the asteroid belt were often traps set by pirates. But something about this one felt different. "Lucy, analyze that signal pattern," Tom said, his fingers hovering over the navigation controls. The computer's response was unexpected. "Signal contains non-standard frequencies. Pattern matches no known human or registered alien communications protocols." Tom stroked his stubbled chin, considering his options. The responsible thing would be to alert Space Patrol and continue his scheduled route. The medical supplies he carried were urgently needed at the Jupiter colonies. But if someone was truly in danger out there, "Plot an intercept course," he ordered. "But keep our defensive systems on full alert." As his ship changed direction, weaving between the massive rocks floating in space, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that he was either about to do something incredibly noble or incredibly stupid. Probably both. The source of the signal turned out to be a small ship, barely larger than a shuttle, wedged precariously between two asteroids. Its design was like nothing Tom had ever seen: smooth, almost organic-looking curves instead of the utilitarian angles of human vessels. The hull had a strange, iridescent quality that reminded him of soap bubbles. "Life signs?" Tom asked. "One detected. Weak but stable. Atmosphere within the vessel is thin but breathable." Tom suited up, double-checking his oxygen supplies and making sure his magnetic boots were properly charged. "Keep the engines hot, Lucy. If anything looks suspicious, be ready for a quick exit." The space between the ships was only about 50 meters, but to Tom, it felt like crossing an ocean. Each push off his ship's airlock sent him floating through the void, the stars wheeling slowly around him as he maneuvered with his suit's thrusters. The alien vessel grew larger in his vision, and he could now see the damage: a massive gash along one side, probably from a collision with one of the countless rocks in the belt. Finding the airlock was tricky. It wasn't where human ships typically put them. When he finally located it, the mechanism was surprisingly simple to operate, though the symbols marking it were completely foreign. Inside, emergency lights cast everything in a soft purple glow. The ship's interior was as strange as its exterior: corridors that curved organically, surfaces that seemed to shift color slightly as he passed. The artificial gravity was working, but set lower than Earth standard. He found the pilot in what he assumed was the bridge. She, at least, Tom's mind categorized the alien as female, was slumped over the controls. Her skin was a pale blue-white, almost translucent, with faint patterns that seemed to pulse with light. She had a humanoid form, but more delicate, almost crystalline in appearance. A wound on her head leaked a fluid that sparkled like liquid starlight. As Tom approached, her eyes opened, all three of them. They were deep violet and had no pupils, yet somehow conveyed both fear and hope. "Easy there," Tom said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm here to help." The alien tried to speak, but only managed a weak sound like wind chimes in a breeze. She gestured weakly at a panel on the wall, which Tom now noticed was flashing urgently. He didn't need to understand the alien language to recognize a warning when he saw one. The ship's power core was becoming unstable. They had minutes, maybe less, before it would breach. Tom had a choice to make, and he had to make it fast. He could leave now, save himself, and probably regret it for the rest of his life. Or he could try to save her, knowing it might kill them both. He looked at those strange violet eyes again and made his decision. Tom's heart pounded as he made his decision. With practiced movements, he unclipped the emergency medical kit from his suit and pulled out a universal stabilizer patch. The alien watched him with those strange violet eyes as he carefully applied it to her head wound, stopping the flow of the glowing fluid. "Lucy," he spoke into his comm, "prep the medical bay and scan everything you can about this ship's power core. We need options." The computer's response was immediate. Power core showing critical instability. Estimated time to breach, 4 minutes, 20 seconds. Recommended course of action, immediate evacuation. Tom looked around the alien bridge, his mind racing. The pilot was in no condition to walk, and carrying her while spacewalking would be tricky. But there was no other choice. "I'm getting you out of here," he told her, hoping his tone would convey what his words might not. "Can you hold on to me?" The alien seemed to understand. She reached out with slender arms that were stronger than they looked. Tom helped her up, supporting most of her weight. She was surprisingly light, perhaps due to her crystalline physiology. The ship groaned around them, stress fractures spreading across its organic-looking walls. The purple emergency lights flickered ominously. 3 minutes to core breach, Lucy announced. They made their way through the curving corridors, Tom half carrying the alien pilot. Every step had to be careful, the ship's artificial gravity was becoming unstable, fluctuating wildly. One moment they were nearly floating, the next they were being pulled down with almost crushing force. At the airlock, Tom faced his next challenge. His space suit wasn't designed for two, and the alien didn't have one of her own. He would have to share his oxygen supply. "Lucy, calculate oxygen requirements for dual breathing. Warning, oxygen supply will be critically low for 2 beings. Estimated safe duration, 6 minutes. Tom quickly detached his helmet's emergency oxygen sharing system, a simple tube and mask designed for rescuing humans in space. He had no idea if it would work with alien physiology, but it was their only choice. The alien understood what he was trying to do. She took the mask and placed it over what he assumed was her breathing apparatus. Tom helped her secure it, then checked his suit's oxygen gauge. The numbers were already dropping faster than he'd like. 2 minutes to core breach, Lucy warned. Tom sealed his helmet and opened the airlock. The void of space welcomed them, stars twinkling indifferently at their predicament. The alien clung to his back as he activated his suit's thrusters, pushing them toward his ship. That's when everything went wrong. A piece of the deteriorating alien ship broke off, spinning toward them. Tom fired his thrusters hard, trying to dodge, but the debris clipped his leg. Pain shot through him as his suit's damage alert started blaring. The impact sent them spinning, precious seconds ticking away as Tom fought to stabilize their trajectory. 1 minute to core breach. His ship looked impossibly far away. The oxygen gauge was dropping into the red. His injured leg throbbed, and he could feel the warmth of blood inside his suit. The alien's grip on him was weakening. But Tom Miller hadn't survived 10 years as a space hauler by giving up when things got tough. He redirected all power to his remaining functional thrusters and pushed hard toward his ship's airlock. 30 seconds to core breach. They were almost there. Just a few more meters. The alien's breathing was becoming labored in his ear, the shared oxygen nearly depleted. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. The airlock was right in front of them now. Tom reached out with one hand, straining for the emergency release handle. Tom's fingers closed around the airlock handle just as Lucy announced, 10 seconds to core breach. With the last of his strength, he pulled. The airlock door swung open, and he pushed himself and the alien inside. They tumbled through the artificial gravity field as the door sealed behind them. "Lucy, get us out of here!" Tom shouted, still holding the alien close as they lay on the airlock floor. The ship's engines roared to life, pushing them away from the dying alien vessel. Through the small airlock window, they watched as the beautiful alien ship finally lost its battle with stability. The breach started as a small point of light, then expanded into a brilliant purple explosion that lit up the asteroid field like a newborn star. The shockwave hit them moments later, making Tom's ship shudder violently. "Damage report," Tom called out, trying to stand despite his injured leg. "Hull integrity at 92%. No critical systems damaged. Medical bay ready for patients." Tom looked down at his leg. His suit was torn, and blood had pooled inside, but the wound wasn't as bad as it felt. The alien, however, wasn't doing well. Her crystalline skin had lost its glow, and her breathing was shallow even after he removed the emergency mask. "Come on," he said gently, helping her up. "Let's get you to medical." The alien leaned heavily on him as they made their way through the corridor. Tom's ship wasn't fancy, but its medical bay was well equipped, a necessity for solo operators in deep space. He helped her onto the examination bed, where Lucy's scanners immediately went to work. "Patient's physiology is unlike any known species in database," Lucy reported. "Detecting severe internal trauma and energy depletion. Recommendation: proceed with caution." Tom cleaned and bandaged his own leg first. He couldn't help anyone if he passed out from blood loss. Then he turned his attention to his mysterious passenger. Her 3 eyes followed his movements, and he sensed she was trying to communicate something. She raised her hand, and to Tom's amazement, patterns of light began flowing across her skin, forming shapes in the air above her. They resolved into a simple image, a crystal and what looked like a battery symbol. "Energy," Tom said, understanding dawning. "You need energy." The alien nodded weakly. The effort of creating the light display seemed to have drained her further. Tom thought quickly. His ship's power core was different from her vessel's, but energy was energy. He looked around the medical bay and his eyes fell on the tissue regenerator. The device used carefully controlled energy pulses to speed up healing. "Maybe. Lucy, can you modify the tissue regenerator to release its energy in a steady stream rather than pulses?" Warning: such modification would be dangerous and void the equipment warranty. "Just do it," Tom said, already pulling the device closer to the bed. "And monitor her vital signs carefully." He adjusted the regenerator's settings according to Lucy's instructions, then hesitated. This could either help the alien or harm her further. But her skin was becoming more transparent by the minute, and the light patterns within were fading. The alien reached out and placed her hand on the regenerator, then looked at Tom with what he could have sworn was a smile. Taking that as consent, he activated the device. The effect was immediate and stunning. Energy flowed from the regenerator into the alien's body, and her skin began to crystallize more solidly. The patterns of light within her grew stronger, more vibrant. Her 3 eyes brightened, and the head wound that Tom had patched earlier began to heal itself. As her strength returned, she sat up on the examination bed. The air around her sparkled with tiny points of light, like a personal galaxy. She reached out and touched Tom's injured leg. Before he could react, a warm sensation spread through the wound, and he watched in amazement as his torn flesh knit itself back together. "Well," Tom said, testing his now healed leg, "I guess that makes us even." Now that the immediate danger had passed, Tom and his alien guest faced a new challenge: communication. She seemed eager to talk, her crystalline features animated as she created more light patterns in the air between them. The patterns were becoming more complex, shifting from simple pictures to what looked like flowing script. "Lucy," Tom called out, "start recording these light patterns. See if you can find any mathematical constants or repeating sequences that might help us understand them." The alien watched with interest as the ship's systems began documenting her light writing. She pointed to herself and a pattern appeared, a beautiful swirl of light that must have been her name. "That's a bit complicated for my human tongue," Tom said with a smile. "Mind if I call you Crystal? Since, well, He gestured at her crystalline appearance. She tilted her head, then nodded, apparently understanding his meaning if not his exact words. She pointed at him questioningly. "Tom," he said, touching his chest. "I'm Tom." Crystal repeated the motion, creating a light pattern that somehow captured the sound of his name in visual form. Then she began creating more complex displays, showing what looked like star maps and trade routes. "Lucy, are you getting this?" Tom asked, fascinated. "Affirmative. The patterns appear to contain navigational data. But there's something else. The star configurations don't match any known maps." Tom leaned forward, intrigued. "Different galaxy?" Crystal shook her head. She waved her hand, and the star map shifted, showing the familiar spiral of the Milky Way. But when she zoomed in on their region of space, there were structures he'd never seen before, vast networks of what looked like energy conduits connecting different star systems. "Those aren't there," Tom said, pointing at the energy networks. "At least, not that we can see." Crystal's expression changed to something that might have been surprise. She created another image, this one showing two layers of space overlapped. One looked like normal space, the other filled with the energy networks she'd shown before. Two dimensions of space? Tom wondered aloud. Or maybe, the same space, but visible on different energy frequencies? Crystal nodded enthusiastically, her skin pulsing with brighter patterns. She pointed to herself, then to the energy network layer. "You're from that layer of space?" "The same physical space but, operating on a different energy frequency?" The alien's three eyes sparkled, and she created a simple image of a check mark. Then her expression grew serious. She showed an image of her ship, followed by what looked like attack vessels pursuing her. The pursuing ships had a different pattern of energy signatures than her vessel. "You were running from someone," Tom said grimly. "That's why you were in the asteroid belt." "Trying to hide?" Crystal confirmed this with another light pattern. She showed more images, her people, beautiful crystalline beings living in cities of pure energy, then another race, darker, their energy patterns jagged and aggressive. The images showed conflict, pursuit, and finally her desperate flight through a barrier between the energy dimension and normal space. Tom sat back, trying to process what he was seeing. He'd just stumbled into something much bigger than a simple rescue mission. Crystal wasn't just any alien, she was a refugee from what amounted to a parallel dimension, one that existed alongside normal space but operated on entirely different energy frequencies. "Lucy," he said quietly, "how close are we to the nearest space patrol outpost?" "Nearest outpost is 6 hours at maximum speed. However, your scheduled delivery of medical supplies to the Jupiter colonies is due in 18 hours. Tom looked at Crystal, who was watching him intently. The medical supplies were important, but this situation was beyond anything he'd ever encountered. If hostile forces from another dimension were pursuing Crystal, the authorities needed to know. Before Tom could make his decision about their next move, Lucy's warning system lit up the bridge in red. Multiple objects detected entering normal space. Energy signatures are unlike anything in database. Similar patterns to those shown in the alien's light display. Crystal's skin dimmed noticeably, and she created an urgent light pattern, the same jagged, aggressive energy signature she'd shown in her earlier images of her pursuers. "They followed you through," Tom said, quickly moving to the ship's controls. "Lucy, how many?" 3 vessels detected. Size approximately twice that of this ship. They appear to be scanning the debris field from Crystal's ship. Tom's mind raced. His cargo ship wasn't built for combat. Its only real defense was its speed, and even that might not be enough against ships from an advanced energy-based civilization. Crystal moved to stand beside him, her light patterns showing a series of quick images, the enemy ships, then the asteroid belt, then what looked like energy waves disrupting sensors. You think we can hide? Tom asked, understanding her suggestion. Use the asteroids and their mineral content to confuse their scanners? She nodded, then created another pattern showing the energy dimension overlapping with normal space. The pattern suggested the pursuing ships would have trouble maintaining both dimensional frequencies at once. Lucy, kill all non-essential systems. Minimal power only. And plot us a course through the densest part of the asteroid field. The ship's lights dimmed as systems shut down one by one. Tom guided the vessel manually, using the asteroid's natural gravitational pulls to help move them along without using too much engine power. Crystal stood next to him, her crystalline body providing just enough light to see the controls. She created small light patterns showing the enemy ship's positions, somehow able to sense their energy signatures even at this distance. They played this deadly game of hide-and-seek for nearly an hour, weaving through the asteroid field while the hunter ships searched in an expanding pattern. Tom's hands were sweating on the controls, every small course correction feeling like it might give them away. Then Crystal's light patterns suddenly became more urgent. One of the hunter ships had changed its search pattern, heading directly toward their position. "They've found us?" Tom whispered. Crystal shook her head, creating a pattern that showed their ship was still hidden. But the hunter ship's new course would bring it dangerously close to their position. Tom watched the radar display, showing the massive asteroid they were hiding behind and the approaching hunter ship. They couldn't move without risking detection, but staying put might be just as dangerous. That's when he noticed something about the hunter ship's approach vector. It was going to pass very close to a cluster of smaller asteroids, all of them rich in magnetic ores according to Lucy's sensors. "Crystal," he said quietly, "can your people manipulate energy fields?" She nodded, creating a small demonstration of light bending around her hand. "If I can get those asteroids to create a magnetic pulse, could you enhance it somehow? Make it strong enough to disrupt their systems?" Crystal's 3 eyes widened in understanding. She quickly created a pattern showing energy waves amplified to massive proportions. "Lucy, calculate the minimum power needed to create a magnetic pulse using the ship's emergency beacon. Time it for when the hunter ship passes that asteroid cluster. Warning, such an action could drain our remaining power reserves." "Better than getting caught," Tom muttered. "Crystal, get ready. This might be our only chance." The hunter ship drew closer to the asteroid cluster. Tom's finger hovered over the emergency beacon control, while Crystal prepared herself, her skin beginning to glow brighter with gathered energy. The timing would have to be perfect. Tom slammed the emergency beacon control, and the magnetic pulse shot out into space. Crystal's reaction transformed the simple pulse into something extraordinary. Her crystalline body blazed like a newborn star, patterns of light spreading outward in waves of pure energy. The magnetic field from the asteroids amplified and twisted under her control, becoming a weapon none of the hunters had expected. The lead hunter ship never stood a chance. As the enhanced pulse hit it, its attempt to exist in both dimensions became its downfall. The vessel's sleek form shuddered, energy crackling across its hull as its systems overloaded. Its lights flickered out like dying fireflies, leaving it to drift helplessly among the asteroids. "Got one," Tom said grimly. But his victory was short-lived. "Multiple weapon signatures detected," Lucy warned. "The remaining hunters are charging primary weapons." Crystal swayed beside him, her form dimmer after the massive energy expenditure. But her light patterns were clear, they needed to move, now. Tom threw the ship into a spiral dive just as energy beams cut through the space where they'd been. Each shot distorted reality itself, leaving tears in space that sparkled with otherworldly light. One blast passed so close that Tom felt the hair on his arm stand up from the dimensional distortion. "Shields at 42%, Lucy reported. "Power systems straining." Crystal pressed her hand against the ship's wall, and brilliant patterns of light spread across the hull. Tom watched in amazement as the next barrage of energy weapons bent around them, deflected by whatever field she was generating. "That's incredible," he breathed. Then he saw her crystalline form growing more transparent with each deflected shot. "But it's killing you." She gave him a look that clearly said this was better than the alternative. "Multiple impacts imminent," Lucy warned. "Current course leads to terminus in asteroid field." Tom studied the radar, mind racing. They couldn't outrun the hunters forever, and Crystal couldn't maintain the shield much longer. That's when he saw it, a massive asteroid tumbling slowly through space, its surface riddled with deep canyons and what looked like lava tubes from its molten past. "Lucy, scan that rock. Find me a tunnel big enough for our ship but tight enough to give those larger vessels trouble." The computer's sensors swept the asteroid. Suitable tunnel network detected. But passage success probability is below 40% even with optimal conditions. Another energy blast rocked the ship. Crystal's shield flickered dangerously, her three eyes showing the strain of maintaining it. "Better odds than out here," Tom said. He looked at Crystal. "Can you hold that shield for just a bit longer?" She nodded despite her obvious exhaustion, her determination clear in the set of her crystalline features. Tom drove the ship straight toward the asteroid's pockmarked surface, diving into a canyon that plunged deep into the rock. The hunter ships followed, their energy weapons lighting up the stone walls with each shot. The tunnel was a nightmare of tight turns and sudden drops. Tom flew on instinct and Lucy's radar guidance, the ship's hull scraping against stone more than once. Behind them, one of the hunter ships miscalculated a turn, its larger size proving fatal in the confined space. The explosion shook the entire asteroid, bringing down chunks of rock that Tom had to dodge along with weapons fire from the last pursuer. Crystal's shield was barely visible now, her form almost transparent as she poured the last of her strength into protecting them. "Tunnel exit ahead," Lucy announced. "But power levels critical." Tom's eyes fixed on the radar display, an idea forming. "Crystal, on my mark, drop the shield. Lucy, divert everything we've got left to the magnetic pulse generator." Crystal looked at him questioningly but nodded her understanding. The tunnel's exit approached, showing stars beyond. The last hunter ship was right behind them, its weapons charging for a killing shot. Tom's hand hovered over the controls. Timing would be everything. The hunter ship's destruction lit up the asteroid field like a miniature sun. Tom's ship drifted in space, running on emergency power only, while Crystal lay motionless on the bridge floor. "Lucy, how bad is it?" Tom asked, kneeling beside the alien's nearly transparent form. "All systems at critical levels. Power reserves at 2%. Life support operating on backup cells." The computer paused. "The alien's energy signature is extremely weak but stable." Tom looked at their situation. They were dead in space, too far from the Jupiter colonies to call for help, and his mysterious passenger was barely alive. The medical supplies in his cargo hold were needed urgently at the colonies, but Crystal needed energy to survive. That's when he remembered something. The medical supplies included emergency power cells for hospital equipment. "Lucy, would the medical transport batteries be compatible with our systems?" "Affirmative. But using them would compromise the sterility of the medical shipment." Tom didn't hesitate. "Better to save one life now than risk losing both of us out here." He quickly went to the cargo hold and returned with several power cells. As he connected the first cell to the ship's systems, Crystal stirred. Her three eyes opened slightly, and a weak pattern of light formed above her. "Save your strength," Tom said gently. "Help is coming." Once the ship had enough power, Tom directed energy through the modified tissue regenerator they'd used earlier. Crystal's form began to solidify again, the light patterns within her growing stronger. After what seemed like hours, she finally sat up. Her first action was to create a complex pattern of light that spread throughout the ship, restoring power to systems that had been damaged in the fight. "Ship systems returning to normal parameters," Lucy announced. "Detecting unusual energy signature integration with our technology." Crystal stood, her crystalline form now glowing with renewed strength. She created a series of images showing Tom's ship modified with energy patterns similar to her own technology, a gift of knowledge. "You're upgrading my ship?" Tom asked, amazed. She nodded, creating more patterns that showed increased efficiency, better protection, and capabilities he hadn't dreamed possible. Her people's energy-based technology was merging with his ship's systems, creating something entirely new. Then she showed him something else. A map of nearby space with a specific location marked. A place where others of her kind had hidden, building a secret sanctuary away from their pursuers. "A safe haven?" Tom asked. "For refugees from your dimension?" Crystal confirmed this with a light pattern, then added something else, an image of Tom's ship bringing supplies and helping others like her who had fled the conflict. Tom understood the offer. She was inviting him to be part of something bigger, to help build a bridge between their two civilizations. The medical supplies could be delivered by another cargo hauler, but this opportunity was unique. "Lucy," he said with a smile, "plot a course to these coordinates. I think we just got a new job." Crystal's joy manifested as a dazzling display of light patterns that danced around the bridge. She reached out and touched Tom's hand, and in that moment, he felt a connection to something vast and wonderful, the beginning of an understanding between two very different forms of life. As their ship moved through space, now humming with its hybrid of human and crystal technology, Tom thought about how a simple decision to investigate a distress signal had changed everything. Sometimes the greatest rewards came from risks taken not for profit or glory, but simply because it was the right thing to do. Crystal created one final pattern, a beautiful mix of light and energy that somehow conveyed both gratitude and promise. The pattern slowly formed into words that Tom could read: "Thank you for saving me, friend. Now let me show you wonders you never imagined." Tom smiled. This wasn't an ending, it was just the beginning of a much bigger adventure.